Well, hello. Let's do a reading. Let's read Samuel Johnson's London, the poem that ushered him into the English literary scene. I think it was in 1734-35 when he first introduced this poem anonymously. And he wasn't anonymous for long. London set out to find out who he was. We're reading it from a quite antique volume, one of 12 books that I purchased in the complete works of Samuel Johnson. You can see it says Johnson's works right there. I have to handle this book very carefully. The book is almost 200 years old, 198 years to be exact. So every time I open it, it causes stress on the binding. So I'll be very careful. Now, I've read this poem once before, didn't understand it at all. I had to go back and read Juvenal's third satire, which this poem is based on, to understand. Now, the footnotes aren't any help. The footnotes are in Latin, so it goes to show this was made for to be read by someone, probably a literary man in the 18th century England that had studied Latin and could read the footnotes. So we're going to do our best. We'll read it. I'm going to try to do my best to read it properly. And I'll stop here and there to explain what I can. Not to insult your intelligence in any way, it's just that it helps me to elaborate on it. And it might be unfamiliar. I expect that this poem is unfamiliar to most people that might see this. So I have a good deal of experience reading about Samuel Johnson, and a little bit of experience reading this because I've read it once before. So let's try it. Here we go. I only dare open the book this far. There it is. London, a poem. London, a poem, in imitation of the third satire of Juvenal. Juvenal, of course, was a Roman poet from between the 1st and the 2nd century AD, written in 1738, and there's a little Latin bit there. Though grief and fondness in my... Here we go, starting the poem. Though grief and fondness in my breast rebel, when injured Thallus bids the town farewell. Now Thallus, I know from reading Juvenal's work, is the name of Juvenal's friend who was leaving Rome for cause. Let's see what that cause is. So again, he says, though grief and fondness in my breast rebel, when injured Thallus bids the town farewell. Now, Johnson here is referring not to Thallus, but to his friend, Richard Savage. So he's using the word Thallus to represent that, because remember, this poem is written in imitation of Juvenal's third satire, which every learned man of the 18th century England would have been familiar with that poem, so they would have known what Johnson was referring to here. He says, yet still my calmer thoughts his choice commend. I praise the hermit, but regret the friend. So I regret that his friend is telling him he's going to leave London. And he says, I'm regretting that he's going to leave, but I commend his reasons. Resolved at length, from vice and London far, to breathe in distant fields a purer air, and fixed on Cambria's solitary shore, give to St. David one true Britain more. So he's going off to Cambria, which I should have looked it up. Is that Wales? Because that's actually where Savage wound up, was in Wales. So maybe that's Wales, or maybe it's Scotland. I can't remember. No, I think it's Wales. For who would leave unbribed Hibernia? Oh, Hibernia. There you go. For who would leave unbribed Hibernia's, or change the rocks of Scotland for the strand? So who would give up, for example, the wild places who would give up London for the wild places of Scotland, for example? There none are swept by sudden fade away. There, those people in Scotland are none of them. He's going to talk about the bad things can happen in London. There none are swept by sudden fade away, but all whom hunger spares with age decay. Here malice, rapine, accident conspire, and now a rabble rages, now a fire. There ambush, here relentless ruffians lay, and here the fell attorney prowls for prey. Here falling houses thunder on your head, and here a female atheist talks you dead. So here, London, all these bad things happen, So the thieves come after you, lawyers look to sue you, houses fall on your head, atheist women are talking to talk you dead. While Thallus, again, savage, while Thallus waits the wherry that contains of dissipated wealth the small remains, on Thames banks in silent thought we stood, where Greenwich smiles upon the silver flood. So just picture that. Thallus, savage, and Johnson, anonymous, are standing at the edge of the Thames River, waiting for a wherry, which I think is a small boat, to come, that's already been loaded up with Richard Savage's last goods, because he doesn't have much left. He's broke. London ruined him, and he's waiting, and they're sitting there looking over the Thames, just in silent thought together. Of course, Richard Savage is going to get in the boat in just a minute and depart. Struck with the seat that gave Eliza birth, Elizabeth the Queen, we kneel and kiss the consecrated earth. In pleasing dreams the blissful age renew, and call Britannia's glories back to view. Behold her cross, triumphant on the main, the guard of commerce and the dread of Spain. Ere masquerades debauched, excise oppressed, or English honor grew a standing jest. So they're thinking about the wonders of Britannia, right? I mean, the great merchants and military navies, the plague of the Spanish, and the honors that come of being English and feeling that honor in London. A transient calm the happy scenes bestow, and for a moment lull the sense of woe. At length awakening, with contemptuous frown, indignant Thallus eyes the neighboring town. So they're standing there at the edge for a minute, and they're looking out, and you can see that Thallus, Savage, is thinking, all I'm about to give up, I'm going to leave all this glory behind. And then suddenly he kind of wakes up and indignant, well, no, this is the place that ruined me. And now begins Thallus, a.k.a. Savage's diatribe of London. Now, you can imagine this I'll try to do it in the voice of Savage, who I can only imagine. Sense-worth, he cries, in these degenerate days, wants even the cheap reward of empty praise. In those cursed walls devote to vice and gain, since unrewarded science tolls in vain. Since hope but soothes to double my distress, and every moment leaves me little less. Leaves my little less. While yet my steady steps no staff sustains, and yet still vigorous revels in my veins, grant me, kind heaven, to find some happier, where honesty and sense are no disgrace, some pleasing bank where verdant osiers play, some pleasant vale with nature's paintings gay, where once the harnessed Briton found repose, and safe in poverty defy his foes. So he's saying, I don't want to have any of this. I want to. This is a place where even science and virtue, there's no succor that comes from that, no soothing that comes of that. Where I lose everything, and I don't want this. I want some quieter, softer, safer place where animals can play, where beside of a gentle river, and I can find a little safety even in poverty. So he's saying he's given up. This is a man to whom London has beaten him down, just as Rome beat Thallus down. Some secret cell, yet powers indulgent give. Let live here, for has learned to live. Here let those reign whom pensions can incite to vote a patriot black, a courtesan white, a courtier white. Explain their country dear bought rights away, and plead for pirates in the face of day. With slavish tenants taint our poisoned youth, and lend a lie the confidence of truth. Why would I stay here? Here's a place where the pensions are given to those who give over their loyalty to the black or the white parties, where where pirates get away with slander because of their allegiances, where the slavish tenants taint and poison our youth, and lend a lie to the confidence of truth. So this is a corrupt, disparaging city. Let such raise palaces and manors buy, collect a tax or farm a lottery, with warbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage, and lull to servitude a thoughtless age. Heroes, proceed, what bounds your pride shall, what check restrain your thirst for power, and behold rebellious virtue quite overthrown. Gold, behold our fame, our wealth, our lives, your own. I don't quite get all of that, I'll confess. Something more, I think, about the disparity of the life in the city. To such the plunder of a land is given, when public crimes inflame the wrath of heaven. But what, my friend, what hope remains for me, who start at theft and blush at perjury? So, me, what place do I have in this place when I blush at, I start at theft and blush at perjury? I'm a righteous man. I'm an honest man. I don't have a place. I don't belong in London. Who scarce forbear, though Britain's court he sing, to pluck a titled poet's borrowed wing. A statesman's logic unconvinced can hear, and dare to slumber over the gazetteer. I don't understand that. Despise a fool in half his pension dressed, and strive in vain to laugh at Clodio's jest. So I don't know who Clodio is. Others, with softer smiles and subtler arts, can sap the principles or taint the heart, with more address a lover's note convey, or bribe a virgin's innocence away. Well may they rise, while I, whose rustic tongue never knew to puzzle right or varnish wrong, spurned as a beggar, dreaded as a spy, live unregarded, unlamented, die. I don't want anything to do with these attempts to get by through corruption, even to corrupt a young maid away from her virtue. For what but social guilt the friend endears, who shares Orgilio's crimes? Or Orgilio, I don't know. Again, probably these figures are people from Roman or Greek history. Who shares Orgilio's crimes, his fortune shares. But thou should tempting villainy present, all marlborough hoarded, and all villaners spent. Turn from the glittering bribe thy scornful eye, nor sell for gold what gold could never buy. The peaceful slumber, self-approving day, unsullied fame, and conscious, ever gay. So these are the things that no gold could buy. My peaceful slumber. Self-approving day, unsullied fame, and conscience, ever gay. Brilliant right there. That one sums it up right there, right? I mean, what he wants to retreat away with the things that are more valuable to him. Again, the peaceful slumber, a good night's sleep. Self-approving day, a day that you can rest your hat on and be happy about. Unsullied fame, and the best of all, conscience, ever gay. The cheated nation's happy favorites see, mark whom the great caress, who frown on me. The cheated nation's happy favorites see. I think those who have given over themselves to the city. Mark whom the great caress, who frown on me. London, the needy villain's general home, the common sewer of Paris and of Rome. Homage again to Juvenal. With eager thirst by folly or by fate, sucks in the dregs of each corrupted state. Forgive my transports on a theme like this. Forgive my, so now he's saying to Johnson, forgive it that I'm talking less way about these things. I cannot bear a French metropolis, illustrious Edward from the realms of the day, the land of heroes and of saints survey, nor hope the British lineaments to trace, the rustic grandeur or the surly grace, but lost in thoughtless ease and empty show. Behold the warrior dwindled to a bow, since freedom, piety refined away, of France the mimic, and of Spain the prey. I think he's basically saying the same, just that feelings that I have towards Rome, I would also have towards the capitals of these other countries. All that at home no more can beg or steal, or like a gibbet better than a wheel. Oh, now that's interesting because the gibbet is what they would break people, or the gibbet is what they would put people in that were, executed, right? And the wheel was what they broke people on. So all that at home no more can beg, all that at home no more can beg or steal, or like a gibbet better than a wheel. I don't get it. Hissed from the stage, psst, boo, hiss, hissed from the stage, or hooted from the court. Their air, their dress, their politics import. Obsequious, artful, voluble, and gay, on Britain's fond credulity they prey. No gainful trade their industry can escape. They sing, they dance, clean shoes, or cure a all sciences a fasting monsieur knows, and bid him go to hell. To hell he goes. I don't know what that means. Ah, what avails it that from slavery far I drew the breath of life in English air, was early taught a Briton's right to praise, and list the tale of Henry's victories, I guess Henry VIII. If the guiled conqueror receives the chain, and flattery prevails when arms are vain. I don't know, I don't understand that either. Studious to please and ready to submit, this supple Gaul was born a parasite. Still to his interest true wherever he goes, wit, bravery, worth his lavish tongue bestows, in every face 1,000 graces shine, from every tongue flows harmony divine. These arts in vain our rugged natives try, strain out with faltering diffidence a lie, and get a kick for awkward flattery. Besides, with justice, the discerning age admires their wondrous talents for the stage. Well, may they venture on the mimic's art, who play from morn to night a borrowed part, practice their master's notions to embrace, repeat his maxims and reflect his face, with every wild absurdity comply, and view each object with another's eye. So in the falsity, right, of playing the part of another, those you admire, your master, taking on their air, taking on their attitude, being that person so that you can capitalize on whatever that characteristic, those characteristics gain for the master. Basically not being yourself. To shake with laughter ere the jest they hear, to pour at will the counterfeited tear, to cry just, false crocodile tears. And as their patron hints the cold or heat, to shake in dog days in December sweat. So not even whatever the master says, it's cold, it's hot, to agree, no matter how the temperature may be, no matter how you may feel. So no contradiction, giving up your personhood. How, when competitors like these contend, can surly virtue hope to fix a friend? So how can virtue find a home in such a place as this? Slaves that with serious impudence beguile, and lie without a blush, without a smile, exalt each trifle, every vice adore, your taste in snuff, your judgment in a whore. So even the slave is following after the master's every want and pleasure, whatever the type of sniffing tobacco they want, or what kind of women they like. Can Balbo's eloquence applaud? I don't know who Balbo is. Not Bilbo, Balbo. Can Balbo's eloquence applaud and swear he gropes his breeches with a monarch's air? For arts like these preferred, admired, caressed, they first invade your table, then your breast. So first your table, then your breast, your heart, right? Let me take a sip here. Explore your secrets with insidious art. Watch the weak hour and ransack all the heart. Then soon your ill-placed confidence repay. Commence your lords and govern or betray. By numbers here from shame or censure free, all crimes are safe but hated poverty. This, only this. So in this environment, any crime you may commit is safe, but poverty will never be safe, because that is the mark of failure, which Savage and Phallus reject. They reject that measure. This, only this, the rigid law pursues. This, only this, provokes the snarling muse. The sober trader at the tattered cloak wakes from his dream and labors for a joke. With brisker air and air the silken courtiers gaze, and turn the varied taunts 1,000 ways. Of all the griefs that harass the distressed, sure the most bitter is the scornful jest. Fate never wounds more deep the generous heart than when a blockhead's insult points the dart. So even the morons, can harm with their nonsense jests in an environment that values less wit and good solid wits and understanding over what would be dastardly virtues? The dark arts. The dark arts of rhetoric. Has heaven reserved in pity to the poor no pathless waste or undiscovered shore? A little homage to Shakespeare there, eh? Undiscovered shore. No secret island in the boundless main, no peaceful desert yet unclaimed by Spain. Quick, let us rise, the happy seats explore, and bear oppression's insolence no more. No, I'm saying that right. This is him saying, this is Savage saying, can I not find someplace better than this? Let's rise and not get put up with this anymore. Let me try that again. Has heaven reserved in pity to the poor no pathless waste or undiscovered shore? No secret island in the boundless main, no peaceful desert yet unclaimed by Spain, who is ravenous for territory and colonies at this point. Quick, let us rise, the happy seats explore, and bear oppression's insolence no more. He's had enough. This mournful truth is everywhere confessed. Slow rises worth by poverty depressed. But here, more slow, where all... and I put that in all caps, so let me try that again. This is again Savage speaking. This mournful truth is everywhere confessed. Slow rises worth by poverty depressed. Ah, yes. This is the one I read the biography of Samuel Johnson. This is the line that he changed in the first and the second edition. In the first edition, which this was, seemingly, actually this isn't the first edition, but he wrote, slow rise, this is a famous line, slow rises worth by poverty depressed. So it's hard for worth to rise in a state of poverty, even if it's virtuous, even if it's good. And I think he changed it to slow rises worth by the patron depressed, or maybe oppressed. He changed it later in his career when he realized that it was patronage, the patron of a gentleman, that would pay for your work or support your work, that would make an author's fame, and he couldn't get that. Namely, it was what's his name, Lord Chesterfield, that would refuse to patronize his dictionary. But this is the early one. Slow rises worth by poverty depressed. So again, Savage saying, I can't possibly get ahead because I'm so damn poor. But here, more slow, more here in London, more slow. We're all our slaves to gold, where looks are merchandise and smiles are sold, where won by bribes, by flatteries implored, the groom retails the favors of his lord. There's something in there. Hold on. But here, more slow, here in London, we're all the slaves where everyone's a slave to gold. Everyone. Where looks are merchandise, so the way you look is part of your merchandise, and smiles are sold. Where won by bribes, by flatteries implored. Boy, didn't I see that sometime recently. The groom retails the favors of his lord. The groom being the man that is like the chauffeur of the time, right? He retains the favor of his lord by smiling, bowing, kowtowing, and providing all that flattery, patronizing flattery, and with which Savage doesn't want any of that. But hark, thy affrighted crowd's tumultuous cries. I feel like I read that wrong. But hark, the affrighted crowd's tumultuous cries roll through the streets and thunder to the skies, raised from some pleasing dream of wealth and power. But hark, The affrighted crowd's tumultuous cries roll through the streets and thunder to the skies, raised from some pleasing dream of wealth and power. So the teeming masses in the streets of London, just, the rat race. Some pompous palace or some blissful bower, aghast you start, and scarce with aching sight sustain the approaching fire's tremendous light. Swift from pursuing horrors, take your way, and leave your little all to flames a prey. Then, through the world, let me read that again, hold on. Some pompous palace or some blissful bower, aghast you start, and scarce with aching sight sustain the approaching fire's tremendous light. Swift from pursuing horrors, take your way. So he's saying, get away, come, follow me, let's get out of here. Then through the world a wretched vagrant roam. Then go through the room a wretched vagrant. Join me. Let's have our tatters, our poverty, but we'll be free. We'll have our integrity. We'll have our sleep well slept nights and our peaceful days. Then through the world a wretched vagrant roam. From where can starving merit find a home? In vain your mournful narrative disclose, while all neglect and most insult your woes. So even though everyone's, pitying you and saying, oh, geez, you're just a poor bum. Should heaven's just bolts oregano's wealth confound? What? Oh, I don't know who oregano is, but probably a wealthy man. So he's speculating, will heavens, lightning rods, figuratively speaking, avoid oregano because of his wealth? Should heaven's just bolts oregano's wealth confound, and spread his flaming palace on the ground? Swift over the land the dismal rumor flies, and public mournings pacify the skies. The laureate tribe in venal verse relate how virtue wars with persecuting fate. With well-feigned gratitude, the pensioned band refund the plunder of the beggar's hand. With well-feigned gratitude, the pension band, so the group of government workers who are going to be enjoying their pensions. I guess I'm among that group. Refund the plunders of the beggar's hand. Refund the plunders of the beggar's hand. I don't quite get that. See, exclamation mark. See, while he builds, the gaudy vassals come, and crowds with sudden wealth the rising dome. The price of borrows and of souls restore, and raise his treasures higher than before. Now blessed with all the baubles of the great, the polished marble and the shining plate, oregano, whoever that is, sees the golden pile aspire, and hopes from angry heaven another fire. I don't know. Could thou I think it has something to do with a wealthy man that's kind of, hoping for better, hoping for more. Couldst thou resign the park and play con for the fair banks of Severn or of Trent? I don't know. I think I need to know more about England to understand that. There mightest thou find some elegant retreat, some hireling senator's deserted seat, and stretch thy prospects over the smiling land for less than rent the dungeons of the Strand. So he's saying, I think, about going away to the country now, right? Couldst thou resign the park and ply calm for the banks of Severn? I guess these are rivers, maybe it's rivers in Wales. So, go away to some gentle river, leave the Thames, go away to the Severn or the Trent, or isn't the Severn in France? I don't know. There mightest thou find some elegant retreat. There you'll get some peace. Some hireling senator's deserted seat. Some senator that has, it's basically some senator who is spending all of his time in London. He's left behind his country seat. You'll have a little peace there because the Lord isn't there. And stretch thy prospects over the smiling land for less than rent the dungeons of the Strand. So that's something that's similar to Juvenal's third satire, in which the the man there is saying, I want to live in a place where I can afford to live for the price of rent, 1 month's rent in Rome, in this case, London. I can live for a year. That's what he's saying right here. So he's modeling it after that third satire. Again, couldst thou reign the park and play for the fair banks of Severn and the oar of Trent? There mightest thou find some elegant retreat, some hireling senator's deserted seat, and stretch thy prospects over the smiling land for less than rent the dungeons of the Strand. He's even referring to the homes on the Strand, which I think is a kind of at the time was an uppity place to live. Uppity. There prune thy walks, support the drooping flowers. Oh, and I forgot to mention there was a piece about 2 pages back where he talked about he needed a retreat before he needed a walking stick, which is the same thing Juvenal said in the third satire, in his the person that he was writing, that was speaking. There prune thy walks, support the drooping flowers. Prune thy walks, what does that mean? Support the drooping flowers, I guess through your attention to them. Direct thy rivulets and twine thy bowers. So he's talking about almost like having an interaction with the landscape. This is something that Thoreau might say. Thoreau said that he surveyed every square inch of the land around Concord, owned, appraised, and lived in every square inch of it merely through his walks. In this case, he's saying he'll prune the walks, support the drooping flowers, direct the tiny rivulets, the little streams, and twine the bowers. Beautiful. And what a good use of time, right? Just walking and enjoying. Oh, I love it. I'm really seeing why this is such a wonderful poem. And while thy grounds a cheap repast afford, despise the dainties of the venal lord. So while you're enjoying all this simple life, you can despise the Lord's palace, the grander, life that they're living. It's just all pomp and circumstance. Their every brush with nature music rings. Their every breeze bears health upon its wings. On all thy hours security shall smile, and bless thine evening walk and morning toil. Prepare for death if here at night you roam. This is amazing. I really do like this. Thoreau would have loved it. And sign your will before you sup from home. Some fiery fop is like the way they dress, the overdressed. With new commission vain, who sleeps on brambles till he kills his man. Some frolic drunkard reeling from a feast provokes a broil and stabs you for your jest. He's talking about in the town you're going to meet the dandy dressed in all of his finery, and the mistreating his servants, or the drunk on the street that's going to slug you upside the head, or the like he said for or I said this in another video, the young man wants to show his strength and pick a fight with you, right? You're not going to have to deal with any of that out there in the countryside, or less. Provokes a broil and stabs you for a jest. Yet even I'm thinking of street gangs, right? To take out a life to prove your worth. Yet even these heroes, mischievous gay, lords of the streets and terrors of the way, talking about these people that you would meet on the streets of London, flushed as they are with folly, youth, and wine, their prudent insults to the poor confine. Because he's saying even in the city, these ruffians, these bad guys, they pick on the poor, right? They're not going to pick on the rich man who has the law on his side and probably has servants armed. Afar they mark the flambeau's bright approach. The flambeau, I think, is like the wealthy man, right? He sees him coming down the street far because he's got his entourage and etc. And the bad guys aren't going to mess with him. And shun the shining train and golden coach. In vain these dangers past your door you close, and hope the balmy blessing. So you get inside and you close the door and hope the bad guys don't then turn on you. And hope the balmy blessings of repose, cruel with guilt and daring with despair. The midnight murder bursts the faithless bar. Invaders, so they burst through the bolted door that you've got. They come in anyway, the robbers. The midnight murderers burst the faithless bar, invades the sacred hour of silent rest, your peaceful home, and leaves unseen a dagger in your breast. That's what you get for living in London. Scarce can our fields such crowds at Tyburn die. Tyburn is about 3 miles out of London at the time. Was a famous place for the executions. They would execute the criminals there, bring them on a donkey cart from the prison 3 miles through town, stopping along the way for a last supper, have a drink, and then roll the cart up. The nooses were hanging. They would put them around your neck, and the donkey cart would continue on its way, and you would hang. People would, if you paid them, they would come up and hold your legs and help you to suffocate quicker. That's what he's talking about, Tyburn. He says, "Scare," and they would execute people by the dozens at a time. "Scarce can our field such crowds at Tyburn die." So we don't even have enough. He's saying, we have, even though we're executing them by the dozens at Tyburn Tree is what they called it. There's still more bad people in London than we can execute. With hemp the gallows and the fleet supply. Propose your schemes, ye senatorian band, whose ways and means support the sinking land. So go on with all your good self, you senators, your proposals about how you're going to make it better. It's sinking nonetheless. Lest ropes be wanted in the tempting spring, to rig another convoy for the king. Did Johnson write this? Oh, this is because of the time. It has a footnote here that's not in Latin. It says the nation was discontented at the visits the king had been making to the King of Hanover. But I'm still surprised that Johnson wrote this. He was young when he wrote this, but he was a bit of a monarchist. But I was saying, unless they prepare ropes to hang the king, lest ropes be wanting in the tempting spring, to rig another convoy for the king. Wow, I didn't know Johnson wrote this. A single gaol is a jail, of course. A single gaol in Alfred's golden reign, Alfred, I don't know who that is, could half the nation's criminals contain. Alfred, another king. He's saying, so in Alfred's time, we wouldn't need so many prisons, because he knew how to handle things. A single gaol in Alfred's golden reign could half the nation's criminals contain. Isn't that true? Everybody, even smart people like Samuel Johnson, are always thinking it was better in the past. It wasn't better in the past. It was always worse in the past. A single gaol in Alfred's golden reign could half the nation's criminals contain. Fair injustice then, without constrained ardor, held high the steady scale, but sheathed the sword. No spies were paid, no special juries known. Blessed age, but how different from our own. Again, lamenting the past. Give it up, Johnson. Much could I add, but so now he's getting. So we're near the end, right? So he's Richard Savage is saying, well, much could I add. He's talking. They're back at the shore of the Thames, right? The boats, the wherry is about to take off, and his goods are loaded. He's about to take off, depart down the Thames, and off he goes to Wales, right? And he says, but much could I add, much could I add. But see the boat at hand? The tide retiring calls me from the land, because you always have to get in and go with the tide. Farewell, when youth and health and fortune spent, thou fliest for the refuge of the wilds of Kent. So he's saying, no, I'm going to leave. Now, Johnson, for farewell, and of course, anonymous. When you've had enough of this and your fortune's gone and your youth is spent and you decide to retire to the wilds of Kent, and tired like me with follies and with crimes, in angry numbers warnest succeeding times, then shall thy friend nor thou refuse his aid. Now then shall thy friend nor thou refuse his aid, still foe to vice, forsake his Cambrian shade, in virtue's cause once more exert his rage, thy satire point, and animate thy page. That was the last bit, and I couldn't quite get it. What? I mean, look at that last sentence, that last paragraph. And so he's saying, I'm getting on the boat. Imagine him stepping on the boat, right? And he's saying, when you, Anonymous, when you, Johnson, are fed up with this city and you decide to go, and you're tired like me with follies and with crimes and angry numbers, warnest succeeding times, then shall thy friend, I think he's saying me, then shall thy friend me, nor thou refuse his aid. So at that time, then neither of us will refuse to help one another. We'll be there for each other because we're all like mind. Still foe to vice. You and I will be foes to vice. Forsake his Cambrian shade. Still foe to vice. Forsake his Cambrian shade. Refuse to aid. So I guess we won't leave our retired safety In virtue's cause once more exert his rage, thy satire's point and animate thy page. I don't get it. One more time. Thou fliest for refuge to the wilds of Kent. And so Johnson goes to Kent. Savage is already in Wales. And tired like me with follies and with crimes, in angry numbers warneth succeeding times, then shall thy friend nor thou refuse his aid. I get it. Once we've retired, we've done with it. We return to our places, and we're strengthened by our retreat, and we're still vital. And he says, in angry numbers warneth succeeding times, then shall thy friend, me, nor thou, nor you, refuse his aid. We'll help one another, and still foes to vice. We're foes to vice, and we'll forsake his Cambrian shade. So we will leave the Cambrian shade. In virtue's cause once more exert his rage. So in the cause of virtue we'll exert our rage. Thy satire point and animate thy page with thy writing. So we'll go back to the countryside. Me, Savage, to the to Wales. You to anonymous Johnson to Kent. He wasn't from Kent. He was from Litchfield. Maybe that's in Kent. I don't know. And continue working and writing. We did it. We got through it. Now let's carefully creak the book shut. You can hear it creaking. I should do it here. And I'll put it away. Oops, I forgot to put a marker on. Hold on. My bad. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll get that later. Forgot to mark the page with my bookmark. We did it. We got through Samuel Johnson's London. It took us over 40 minutes. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And it was so fun to read that. Now, what happened was this poem was published in London. I think it was set in 1738. It was, or 34. And it was an immediate success. Alexander Pope said, remember it was published anonymously. He said the author can't hide for long. We'll find out who it is. They did find out. It was Samuel Johnson, and that sealed Johnson's career as a writer. A few years later, he began his dictionary project, which secured his fame forever. He wrote a number of other things besides that, including a series of essays called The Rambler, another called The Idler. He wrote a story called Rasselas, which he actually wrote to get the money to go see his mom, who's on her deathbed. He didn't quite make it. He missed it by 2 days. But he did that in 48 hours, and that's a heck of a story. I haven't read it myself. He also wrote, of course, his dictionary, the landmark, not the first, but one of the first, and probably maybe the best dictionary ever written certainly by one man with just a few. He called them amanuenses, the people that helped him out, his helpers. He had 6 of them. I thought he could write the dictionary in 3 years, but it took him 9. And then he eventually did get a pension from the king, so he ended up eating his words in terms of his disdain for servants of the state, of which I am. Anyway, we did it. That was fun. Okay, thanks for joining me. Be safe, but not too safe. Take care.